I'd show you some of my illustrations from the comic book that I'm working on. I don't actually have a name for the comic book yet, but thought I'd show you a little bit of what I've been working on here. The idea I have is for a team of superheroic characters from the future. And, well, actually it's set in the future. First it takes place about 50 years in the future, and then it's 250 years into the future. And I have this idea of a 2001 Space Odyssey type thing where there's extraterrestrials which actually have a kind of UFO device that basically interferes with us. It causes strange evolutionary changes in some people. And I'm thinking of keeping that largely as a mystery and something that'll be explored little by little over time. Maybe similar to the X-Files kind of thing, but that's not really the point of the story. Is so much how the superpowers came to be, but certain people are born with these abilities. For the most part, it's just speed, strength, endurance, things like that. But some of them do have special powers as well. And so my idea is that there's a task force, or sorry, really a special forces team led by a character I'll show you shortly. And when it comes to dealing with these superheroic beings that are called hybrids because they're part alien, part human, as their DNA has been sometimes just through the device that they come in contact with, it manipulates their DNA. Other times they were abducted by beings that resemble the Greys that alter their DNA and cause them to look, in some cases, bizarre or alien-like. Most of the time they still look normal, just that they tend to resemble kind of like the ideal of humanity. Not all of them are necessarily like attractive, like models and tall and muscular, but a lot of them are, is the idea, super smart and everything else. Not that they're perfect human beings, they all have flaws, but they're higher up in the evolutionary development, basically. So this alien race is a mystery. It keeps itself hidden from us. It's the idea is that it's interfering with us and causing some people to become much more advanced ahead of the rest of us. And there's a lot of controversy over these aliens. Are they ultimately good? Are they bad? Are they necessarily good or bad? Not a lot is really known as they remain a mystery. So like that's kind of a subplot of sorts that I can work on more in the future. So anyway, when it comes to dealing with these hybrids, they're extremely dangerous. Some of them have incredible powers. And so this special forces team, the captain of the team decides to hire on, or not just hire on, but train these superheroic beings, the hybrids. And certain ones that do really, really well in the training are selected to join a special team under the Special Forces team to assist them when dealing with hybrids. Because of their superior reflexes, speed, strength, and so on, they're easily able to dodge bullets and stuff, you know, because they have such strong senses that they can see exactly. They can predict the line, you know, of they can see in their minds just you know, where exactly a bullet's going to go, and so they can you know, avoid getting shot and stuff. It's insanely hard to deal with some of these hybrids. So that's why it's a good idea to train hybrids and to have them to deal with hybrid situations. So that could be anything from a criminal operation that happens to have hybrids to, in some cases, hybrids that are out of control, or that have even been, perhaps in some cases, taken hostage and have experiments done on them. I figure that their organs, being superhuman, would be worth a lot on the black market. So I have all kinds of ideas for different illegal situations. And this is a galactic society in the future. The world has come together, and we've explored space a bit more. We've settled on the moon, we've settled on Mars, maybe other planets as well. So it's kind of like a Star Trek kind of idea. But there are, of course, problems that have to be dealt with. There's not really there's no war anymore, because we're kind of one united, similar to the Federation of Star Trek, but there still are problems. There's still terrorist groups. There's still all kinds of corruption happening that threatens, this galactic society. So you still need heroes. You still need very skilled, well-trained groups of specialists to handle different issues, from, of course, police investigating murders and stuff to special forces units. So it's basically the military of the future here is special forces. There's no need for military in terms of war, because we're all one society, so there's not really much of a need for that anymore. But the military still exists in terms of special forces. So the captain of the hybrid team is Auspex, I'm calling him. And in a way, there's nothing special about him. Of course, these are all my original designs, for these characters of mine. And Auspex, the idea behind it is that he's not necessarily anything special. There are lots of other hybrids out there, and that's another thing I want to point out, that for this world, a lot of hybrids are not superheroes or supervillains. The vast majority of people who are hybrids either get into sports, because it's an unfair advantage. There tends to be special sports leagues for hybrids, but they get into different fields of expertise. They can be very smart, so that can help them to get jobs that have nothing to do with physical prowess. A lot of hybrids hide the fact they're hybrids, to make their lives easier, to avoid discrimination and stuff. And not that my comic is going to have much in the way of politics. I'm trying to avoid modern day politics here as much as possible. Most of us are not necessarily into, certainly not far left and right. So anyway, I want to avoid that sort of thing, but just trying to make the world realistic, Of course, naturally, there's going to be issues, and not everyone's going to be comfortable with these super beings, and there's going to be a lot of resentment of them as well because of their powers. And so a lot of them are going to try to not actually be known as hybrids. A lot of them, people will realize they are hybrids. It will be hard to hide in terms of their athletic abilities and so on, and resistances to various illnesses or injuries. But a lot of the time they're just people. Even though they're exceptional in a number of ways, a lot of them just want to live normal lives, or they want to become rich and famous, and so very, very few are willing to risk their lives because basically emotionally they're like the rest of us. So a lot of them just are not heroic. Just because you have superpowers doesn't mean that you're automatically brave and heroic and, or anything but self-serving, right? So Auspex isn't, in a way, anything special among hybrids, only that he's worked very hard. He's lifted a lot of weights and stuff, and of course they can lift a lot, so they have to lift an insane amount in order to build, what would be just natural muscle, I suppose. I mean, yeah, they have to work really hard. They don't even, sweat very easily. So, yeah, he's had to work really hard to build up his physique and so that he can compete with other hybrids, which he can. If you look at him, you can tell he's very athletic, and he could handle, if he wasn't a hybrid, he was just a normal human being, you could tell he could handle dealing with most, like average men, So because he's a hybrid, yeah, he could handle normal human beings very, very easily. But he's had to work really hard and train really hard so that he can handle hybrid men or women, whatever, but hybrids as well. So yeah, he's worked very hard. He's trained very hard to be very good. He's great martial arts training, and as well, his special power though is that he can sense things. He has a psychic ability only right before something happens, though. So if someone were a sniper were trying to pick him off, he'd have a sense that a bullet was about to hit him, and so he would know to duck. So it's similar like that, He has a psychic ability that lets him know, like, spur of the moment. So he's very hard to take out in combat, largely because of that ability. That psychic ability, he just senses what's about to happen or what is just starting to happen. I mean, he's just a slightly above everyone else, and so that benefits him with playing cards and various different activities. So I mean, he's bright, he's loyal, he's absolutely determined, focused to do the best that he can, and so he's a natural, well, leader for the group. I'll go into more depth on these characters in the future, but I'm just trying to do kind of a quick, just to kind of go over things kind of quickly here. This guy is called Lord Raven. He's inspired by Lovecraft and Edgar Allan Poe. I'm trying to show you more clearly here. Yeah, he's a dark, gothic character that I like to keep as a little bit of a mystery for now. He'll be in the first edition, but you won't really find out who he really is until the second edition. I really like him. He's probably my favorite one, but I like keeping him as a little bit of a mystery for right now. Drifter, I think I've planned to introduce him in the third issue, I believe, but I'm planning for him to be, I don't know if he's going to be one of the main characters or he's going to be a reoccurring character, recurring ally. I'm not exactly sure what I'm going to be doing with him yet, but I think it looks kind of neat. And I have a bunch of female characters here. I have them in their training kind of wardrobe here, and over here I have them in their, you can't see Vanquisher very well, called her Vanquisher on the left here. She was an orphan that was raised to be a ninja assassin slash thief, and of course she's a hybrid like the rest of them, and now she's gotten out of that life and has been trained as a part of this special forces special team of hybrids, and she's incredibly driven. She's one of the natural leaders of the group, and she called Vanquisher because she's well, she kicks ass basically, but she has a couple psi, as you can see, 2 psi. She also has butterfly knives when she wants to get serious, but she normally uses psi because they're actually a blunt instrument. They're not actually like sharp. They're not intended to cut. They're intended to subdue. Because that's the point of the team, is to keep the peace. And then there's Firelight. I've changed her name. I was calling her Heatwave, but now I decided to call her Firelight. She creates like force fields. Celeste, she can fly and can generate psionic energy, which she can fire from her hands. Snakeskin is a different character. She belongs to a group of celebrity superheroes that I'll show you in a moment. And then again, this is the 3 of the characters I just showed you that are in training attire. Here we have, I was calling her Shield. I'm thinking of calling her Knockout. She won't be introduced until maybe the 4th issue. I can't introduce like a ton of characters all at once because it's just overwhelming, you know, for the reader. So I have to introduce them kind of little by little. But that's her in her training attire, and in her normal attire, you know, that she wears as a hybrid. Heatwave, older. That's not the final look for her when I was developing her and changed her name to Firelight. That's what she is actually going to look like. And then there's Scythe. He's a black man, bald obviously, he shaves his head, and he has the ability to generate blades from his skin anywhere on his body, any kind of size or shape basically that he wants. Can cut through just about anything. But again, these people are about maintaining peace and order, so they're, you know, he can, however, be very, very, very deadly, and he can be quite a warrior, but the point of this whole team is to maintain the peace. Not that they're perfect, you know, human beings. I intend them to have flaws, but yeah, and the one to the right of him was a rough draft of here, so you can see it. Nitro Fury. I'm thinking of actually breaking that up into 2 separate words. His name will actually be Nitro and Fury. Nitro Fury. And I have some ideas for him. I don't want to go into too much of that right now, but his power is that he'll be able to fly beyond the speed of light and can actually fly into other universes, like into other dimensions. So he can actually fly through, I don't know if he can fly through time. I'm not a big fan of time travel stories, but he'll be able to to fly right out of our universe into different dimensions, and so it's kind of boundless what he can do in terms of where he can fly, you know. So I have some. I think he'll be an exciting character actually, and another one is Ballast. He was one of the last characters I designed for that team. He has the ability to create, to rise up rocks basically, and he can even move the rocks over him to create a kind of outer rock skin for himself as well. There's one more character I'll show you in a bit that I created last. And then we have our celebrity superheroes. This is Cruncher. He's not wearing his superhero attire, but he and the others, Snakeskin was one I showed you before. They do a reality show together, where supposedly they go around and be superheroes. Actually, it's scripted. They don't put themselves at great risk, even though they're capable of handling a lot because they're hybrids. They don't want to take many risks, and the people, their agents, everyone in charge of the different shows and movies that they kind of do together, don't want to put them at much risk. So they tend to use doubles in some cases, and so they're fraudulent. Basically, they're frauds, but they are legitimate hybrids, though. But yeah, Buck Roscoe, as I'm calling him. I have an interesting idea what I want to do with that character. I don't want to spoil that though for now. Prince Blaze is one of the leader types of the group. Very much inspired by, again, Hollywood celebrities, I would say, if I haven't mentioned that yet. That was kind of the idea I had behind these, is characters that are not necessarily super likable, I'll say. They're not necessarily intended to be liked by the reader. Not that they're villainous exactly, but they're full of themselves. They're not horrible. They're not all horrible human beings, but they're not our heroes either, right? They're basically frauds. So then we have a few more here. Storm Master, he can create storms. Well, Cruncher, obviously, he doesn't have any other particularly special superpowers, but he's known to crunch things. Prince Blaze, I'm not sure if I worked out quite yet what I want his powers to be, but Stormbringer creates storms. Lady Diamond generates light, like blinding light, so she can blind you with radiant light, which isn't anything special, but it's enough that makes her special enough, and that helps her to be famous. Vanquisher can disappear. That's a useful superpower for sure. The Outlaw is a black guy who's like a badass, kind of almost represents like rappers, like hip-hop artists, and he's actually like a lot of famous rappers, actually. He's actually from an upper middle class family, and he speaks very well. He's well educated, but he acts like he's a backstreet badass, raised from a broken home kind of situation, which he is not, but that's his persona. So he pretends to be someone he's not, like they all kind of do. They all have their pretense. I mean, definitely they all have pretense. He's really kind of playing himself as more of a character than the others, perhaps, but they all hide themselves behind a degree of pretense. Major Phalanx, yeah, he was the original leader, and he's not super young anymore. I'm thinking maybe he's in his 30s now. Most of the others are like in their 20s or early 30s, but he's not old, but he's not super young, so he's not necessarily the big hot ticket of the group, you know what I mean? The media is not necessarily the most excited to see him because everyone's familiar with him. So I mean, yeah, he's probably the most famous of these characters, and at one time very popular, but perhaps now, like, he's not so young anymore. Maybe people are getting a bit tired of him. These are some designs that I had here for the Special Forces unit. These are not hybrids. These are men that, basically military men that have had to work hard. They're the best of the best in the galaxy. So I mean, these are people who they have very good genes, though they're not hybrids. They have very, very good genes, obviously, but they've worked very, very, very hard to be here. These are the best of the best. And then I have a police officer design here. This is RD5s. This is the guy that's in charge of the Special Forces group, and that includes the hybrid team. RD5s. I created this character, a long time ago, and I used him in a lot of different stories of mine over the years. Nothing that I've published. Things I've done for myself. Since I was a teenager, I think I've had him as an idea. But I've never published anything with him before. And he's a Italian-American, I guess you could say. RD5s, which I just always liked that name. I think I got the name from what was that called now? There's a character called Dr. Phibes. The Abominable Dr. Phibes? I think it was called, the old horror movie, and I like the name Phibes, and somehow I got RD Phibes from that, and so I've had him as an interesting character for a while. I wrote different stories where he would be a part of a Special Forces team that would deal with monsters and things like that. Like Freddy Krueger or Jason Voorhees type characters, and there'll probably be some of that here, because some hybrids are going to be monstrous. So, and that kind of takes us a little bit to this guy. I was calling him Hubbub originally, but then I've changed it to Lynxy, and then I changed it to Lynxly. Now, I'll try to keep this short, but he's actually a British guy from the northern part of England, and this little boy that was hanging out in the woods, he was a hybrid, but didn't want to be a hybrid. He didn't want to, he saw himself as being a freak. He didn't want to be a freak. So he wanted to get rid of his hybrid powers. In his case, he was able to bestow his powers. And he didn't want to make the world a worse place by giving his powers to someone that might become arrogant and dangerous to the world. So he looked for the least dangerous creature he could find, which was a squirrel. And he gave his powers to the squirrel, and the squirrel transformed. He became part dragon because this boy was a visual artist, and so he liked drawing like Chinese dragons, and so there's a bit of a Chinese dragon in him. The boy also liked lynxes, so there's a bit of a lynx in him, hence the name Lynxly. And so basically, he is the boy. He has the boy's memory, although he also has a vague memory of being a squirrel too. But the different aspects of the boy and his imagination kind of came into Lynxly. So Lynxly is he's kind of like almost like a clone or something of the boy, obviously, though he's a unique being, and so as far as Lynxly remembers, his parents are the boy's parents, but of course the boy's parents don't recognize him. He's like a strange monster, a creature to them, so he's very much alone in the world in that way. But I think because he's so animal-like, he's able to adjust. Similar to a cat can be so comfortable, like in their environment. They can get disturbed or bothered by things, but then they can find comfort too. Not that they can't get, riled up. Some cats can definitely develop a bad attitude. But I'm thinking he's really good at adjusting. And so I'm thinking, he has a British accent, for the northern part of England, and he's... So yeah, he's an interesting character. I think I've given him 2 or 3 tails, and that's what he looks like there on the side, and kind of from an above view. This is rough, just real rough drawing, but it's an interesting character. And then I've got some sketches here of the characters from different characters, some different angles, to assist me when I'm doing professional drawing. I don't want to give away too much of what I've been drawing here from my comic just yet, but I'll show you a little bit. This is, you can see the fashion that I've been working on here. You have a side angle of that, but But yeah, trying to make it look futuristic, because in the beginning it's not that far into the future, but then it is. So yeah, I have a number of pages illustrated from the first book here, and it's certainly been a lot of work, and I certainly have a lot more work to do. But I thought I'd just show you a little bit of what I've been up to. Again, I don't have a name for this comic yet. The hybrids just seems a little too on the nose. I think I could come up with something better than that, but I'll let you guys know when I come up with something.